Hello and welcome. This is Diana and you are watching Holistic Vibes. This is going to be just like a daily heads up on the energy. Hope everybody is doing well and kind of riding the wave of Scorpio. The energy's spicy. I think that's the easiest way to say it. It's like quick. It's like action. 947 might be important. I don't know. Darkest fears lead to the crown chakra. So like really, truly like looking at the contracts that you've made, right? Like with yourself, those things that you've broken, and how like for the longest time you were living with the, if I break it, then at least nobody else has done it to me. I've done it to myself, right? How has it served you, and how have you, grown through this process, right? So you're breaking the habits of like your patterning. Yeah, and you're unpacking it having to do with like how love has suffered through where you focused your attention and how you're pulling more consciously aware into your present situation moments. I don't know. Take it as it resonates. There's something also in regards to a royal activation. There may be questions in regards to that. There may be some scatteredness in regards to connections, openness, transparency, being seen. They just said don't drop the ball, right? Like stay on top of your organization of like the things you need to get executed. And it's one step at a time, you know, unpacking, unpeeling the crown chakra, right? And the one thing that I'm starting to realize is like you can be fully tapped in, fully expansive, done the work, like always uncovering more, and there are certain patterns or behaviors that like pendulums, like spirits outside of yourself, are essentially trying to push you back into your old, right? And so like looking at those agreements like that you put into place, and like how you're going to take one step today to like break the pattern of old, right? Because it's all about like you bringing in that core enlightenment to the where you're going. Like that's how you break your karma. That's baby steps, right? It's you really looking at like in the wave of obstacle, ask to see truth. Sit and meditate with your higher self and say, show me truth. I don't know which way to go, and I am surrendering the process. I am an allowance. And I promise you, like a doorway, a synchronicity, like somebody's going to come in your path like at the grocery store and like download a message to you. Like the divine, you just have to get to a state where you're quiet enough, where you're open enough, right? To allow the divine plan to come into being, right? To allow your blueprints, your accessibility, your vision of what your future holds. Yeah, your life story, right? For those of you that do like past life regression and QHHT and BQHT, and whatever else everybody wants to delineate off of, an original format, it doesn't matter, right? However, you're accessing those past lives through what means like you're now currently being aware that you are writing your story for this life. And like, as you are in review of your life, what are the highlights that you want to take with you that you're going to be recapping back on, right? Those major key points that were kind of pivots in your life that accessed you to the highest timeline that you're jumping on, that you're in the process of consciously creating. And so, like, this eclipse, like whatever's unfolding, is going to be you getting into a state of being, of allowance, of releasing like the blame and the guilt of like whatever you've been holding on to, and like consciously using the energy, right? Because we're at a potent pivotal time for like the world and the collective consciousness, and like where we're going as an energetic force, right? Like shit's really starting to hit the fan, and people are like fed up and tired. And like we're at the midst of a revolution, right? So like, how do you give honor to your journey in the evolution so that you're no longer living and feeding your old fears? You're now taking the lead in your own divine pathway, right? And there's like a switch that happens when you realize, like, if you lost a job, in all honesty, it's not the first time. It won't be the last time. Like, you have to roll with it and go, okay, so this is my karma. What did I learn? Right? How did I allow to hold space to let that person's karma come to them, right? As long as you always are choosing a higher timeline and you're constantly choosing a higher reflection, like, you allow their karma to unfold however it is. It's like dropping a bomb and walking away. Like, if you're truly tapped into your highest state of being where you're no longer operating out of ego, and there is not an expectation of, oh, it should go this way. You're just merely the observer. You're watching the possible different timelines unfold, right? And as they unfold, like, you're regardless still holding a higher timeline. Like, then you're shifting the way you're working with your fears, where you're working with your triggers, and you then become the master of the ego, right? Of the mind, of the body. And then there's this cohesiveness that comes in with the higher self. And you're then like in an operation of a celebration of union of self, right? I mean, maybe that needed to like unfold. But it's also like looking at like where you sold yourself short, or where you specifically chose to be tied to a lower timeline, right? Even though it appeared to look to be a higher timeline. Does that make sense? Like, it had the possibility of being a higher timeline, but that's where people's ignorance and free will come into play. Like, you can meet a high functioning soulmate, right? But if that person is unwilling to go through the journey of unpeeling those wounds, or that, because there's a certain process of work that has to be done with a counterpart, right? You only can get to a certain point when you're unpacking within self a certain aspect. And as you're going through and peeling these onions, it's like as you're stepping into a state of being for another human being, and you guys are working on this together, it's going to remove blocks and barriers, and you're going to access different gates and vibrational functionality of like essentially portal jumping, right? But you're not just portal jumping for yourself, you're portal jumping for the entire population, right? Like as you're choosing with a high functioning soulmate, you're essentially like opening up I said to say it. So it's like essentially opening up wormholes for higher consciousness. And this feels like it's a conversation, and I don't like that.